Now we are going to look at how to save a list of collections into the database. In case of the person, we might be having more than one nickname, suitable case or use case for our learning. So let's write the nicknames. A nicknames is a list. So I am using array list and it is a string. So I am going to use list of strings. And now we need to mark these nicknames as a collection object. For that we have element collection. So as part of the element collection annotation, JP knows that this nicknames property is collection of objects. And as part of the element collection, it has two parameters. One is a target class, another one is fetch. Fetch, lazy and eager will be there. Lazy means whenever this property has been accessed, then it's going to fetch the data from the database. Eager means while extracting entity from the database, it will load the element collection as well. That's what eager means. Lazy means whenever we access it, then only the data would come. But there is a problem with the lazy. If the object is not connected to the persistent layer, then we get an exception. And in case of the target class, in this case, we are saying it's a list of string. If we don't mention as a string, then we need to use the target class. We'll check that one. First, let's initialize the fetch as eager, initialize it, and now let's create the setters and getters. I have created setters and getters. Now let's add the person nicknames, person dot. We can use the set nicknames directly, or we can use get nicknames. Because we already initialized with empty array, so get also would work perfectly. So get nicknames dot add, and here I am adding, in this case, Ranga. So I added two nicknames, and let's save all of them and run the application. Now if we observe the log, as part of the person table, this we know that, but there is another table called person nicknames, and it has person ID and nicknames, and it's a string varchar of 255 characters, and person ID is big ID, and this ID is taken from here. So this is the one, ID big integer not null, person ID big integer not null. This is how it's going to identify set of nicknames. Now let's look at the insert. In the insertions, first it inserted the person table, and then it inserted nicknames one after another, because we have two nicknames. So it inserted first one and the second one while fetching the data. So if we see this one, this is our fetching the data. Here from person table, left join person nicknames. So while fetching the data for the person object by using find by ID, it already included the person nicknames as well. As we have used fetch type as eager, that's the reason it has fetched nicknames and the person data. If we observe the nicknames, we got both of them. So this is how we are going to use the element collection. Now let's look at the target class. So I will delete the string. I'm deleting the type, and when we run it, now we'll get an exception because we didn't define the type, so we definitely get an exception. So as we expected, we got an exception that nicknames declared as a raw type. So we need to define a target class here. So I will say target class as string.class. If I run it now, the application has successfully executed and person nicknames also been inserted. So this is the purpose of the target class. But as we are using collections, let's go back to the generics. So where I define list of string, so it automatically dates it. Now let's come to the next one. And here the person nicknames, how the table name has come. The table name, it is from the entity class and the property name. So nick underscore names. So I don't want to use like this. Instead of it, I would like to save it as nicknames directly. So for that, we need to override it. We need to use collection table. As part of the collection table, it has the name, It has name, get log, schema, join columns, foreign key, unique constraints, and indexes. So we will check one after another. So now let's override it, and I will say a name as nicknames. Now there are no underscores. Directly we are using it. And another thing is here, as part of the nickname, we are using person ID. So if I need to override this ID also, all I need to do is I need to override the join columns. As part of the join columns, we need to provide join column. And as part of the join column, we have all of them. So the table, nullable, insertable, everything. So I am giving the name as PID instead of the person ID. By default, it takes the entity and the ID. So here I am giving PID and the table name as nicknames. Let's save it and run the application. Now let's go back to the table creation. As part of the table creation, it has used the name that we have given it, which is the nicknames, and even for the ID class, it used whatever we have passed in. In our case, it's a PID. Now we have overridden the ID join column, and I would like to override the nicknames. So in this case, we need to use regular one, which is a column name. So if I use the column and I say name, here I'm going to use nick names without underscores, and I'm saying unique. Typically, nicknames no need to be repeated. So that's the reason I applied it. And let's run the application. Now, when you observe the table creation, nicknames has used, and if we see it, earlier it was nick underscore names. Now, underscore has been taken out as we expected. So nicknames is there, and we have applied unique constraint on the nicknames. So that's the reason it considered unique constraint as well. Now, if you observe and validate it, whether it has fetched the data properly or not. Yes, we got it. Now let's try to save the same data just to validate unique constraint. So I have added a repeated nickname and running the application. We got an exception saying that unique index or primary key violation as we expected. Let's revert it. This is a wrapper class. And what about our own classes which we define? What I mean is, for example, if I have my own custom type, like we have it at the contact list, and we say vehicles and new array list, and this time we are going to use element collection with target class. And here I am going to say vehicle.class and fetch is eager. Now let's go to the vehicle class. As part of the vehicle class, it has the license and the type. We need to add the embeddable annotation to mark the vehicle as embedded into another classes. Let's create setters and getters and update toString method. I have created setters and getters. Now let's create the vehicle. So let's give the license as IN001 and the type is two-wheeler. Let's create another vehicle. So let's say this is four-wheeler. So this is IN002 and this is a four-wheeler. Now let's save both the vehicles into a person object. So we are using the get vehicles as we discussed earlier, and I'll be adding two-wheeler and person dot get vehicles add four-wheeler. Let's say all the files and run the application. Now if we observe, we got another table called person underscore vehicles, and this time it has a license and the type also created, which has been taken from embeddable class, in our case vehicle. It has created foreign key relationship between the person table and the vehicles, and it's the same for nicknames also. Even for the nicknames, the foreign key has been created with the person table. Vehicle also created the foreign key with person table. Now, if we see the insert statements, after inserting the person, nicknames are instead. After that, the vehicles also been inserted into the database. Let's check the find by ID. So as part of the find by ID, we got both the vehicles. So vehicle 1 and vehicle 2. In our case, two-wheeler and the four-wheeler. So this is how we are going to use collections, element collections. So we have seen with the wrapper classes and our custom classes. In case of our custom classes, we need to mark the class with embeddable one. That is required to let the JPA that this class is embedded into another entity. And we can use any collection type. No need to be a list. We can use set. Now we are going to look at another collection type, which is a map. So this is a special case. So here I am using as a first one as a string, and I am going to say this as phone numbers. So the phone numbers can have multiple. So one is for the personal, one is for the home, and one is for office. All we need to do is mark this property with element collection and fetch it with eager. That is all we need to do. So let's create the setters and getters and update the toString method and add some phone numbers, and then we'll observe how JPA treats the phone numbers. Now let's add some phone numbers. So get phone numbers dot put. So I'm saying mobile. Now I'm giving some value. Now let's create another one. Let's say home. I have set the home. Let's create another one called office. Now save all the files and run the application. Now let's observe how tables are created. We have another table called person phone numbers, and one more foreign key has been created. And if we observe the person phone numbers, it has the person ID and phone numbers key. In this case, as we are using map, and map has a key and value pair. So for the value, we got phone numbers. For the key, we have phone numbers underscore key. And the primary key is been defined for the person ID and the phone number key. So this is the advantage of this one. So one person can create one type of phone number. And the insert statement, the person phone numbers has been inserted after person object has been created. And get by ID, as we said the eager, we got all the phone numbers. If we observe it, the table name, we know that how to override the table name for the phone numbers, but what about the keys and the column names? What about the name of the key? So here, instead of the phone numbers underscore key, I would like to save it as a type and phone number as a number. So how can we achieve it? So all we need to do is, first of all, let's change the table name. You know how to change it is by adding collection table. So I'm saying phone underscore numbers, and for the map key, we need to use map key column. So when as part of map key column, we have all other stuff. So for now, I'm going with a name. So here I'm saying type. And in case of column, so you know that how we can change the value of the column using column. So in the column, I'm going to say name is equal to number. Save all the files and run the application and look for the changes. First, the table name. The table name has been changed to the phone numbers, and the value has been changed to the number, and the key has been changed to the type, and foreign key with the person ID and the type. So as the phone numbers, we are saving type and the number. So types can be fixed. So we can use enum for it. So I have created an enum with the phone type having mobile, work, home. So let's use the same over here. So I'm saying phone type. Let's update the setters, getters and toString as well. Now let's update the application. So I'm saying Let's save all the files and run the application. Particularly while creating the table for the phone numbers, it used for the type, it used a tiny integer and it has taken between 0 and 2. If you remember that earlier also, we have seen the similar behavior for the enums. When we are saving the enum, it saves with tiny integer and it takes the values from the one. If order of the enum is changed, then the data would be reading in a wrong way, which we don't want. Let's go to the phone numbers. Map key enumerated. So by default, it's ordinal. Now we are changing to the string. So what happens? You know that instead of saving as numbers, it will be saving with the types. So that way, even though order of enum values is changed, the data would be reading in a same way. So let's save all the files, rerun the application and look for the changes. First of all, if we see the phone numbers table and here the person ID as we expected, and in case of the type, we got not null check and it is a varchar, and of course it checks all the values which are part of the enum. And let's observe the selection. As part of the find by ID, all the values from the map has been fetched using join column. So in our case, left join phone numbers. So this is how we are going to use element collection to save collection of objects into the database.